Hi everyone, so what I'm going to do with this video is show you my dad's scrapbook. So this is the scrapbook that I actually only just showed my kids yesterday. So I was up in my dad's house and I was showing my kids this, and I thought it'd be nice to maybe share it just for any sort of boxing fans out there. So yeah, this scrapbook I actually a few years ago I sort of tried to put together a little bit for my dad because he had an old one, and then I tried to find some of the newer stuff and put it together into the one scrapbook. So this is just a start here. Some nice little logos of Secret Heart Amateur Boxing Club. This is the more up-to-date logo, but that's obviously the amateur gym that my dad came from, and then the Irish ABA logo, and then the Commonwealth logo. So just sort of representing some of the titles that he won as well. So this here was just a little bit of a story in my dad's own words about his amateur career. And then over here it starts off with just some of the photos of my dad with his Irish title. The photo actually here is of the Ulster senior title and the Irish senior title. So in 1985 he held both at the same time, and then up in Homedean Gardens in Ardoyne, this would have been the room where all the trophies and medals were kept, and obviously Terry and Patrick and then Eamon added a lot more to that as well. So these are just some nice photos from back then. Over here then you've got some of the sort of Irish teams that my dad would have been involved with. So he only represented Ireland, I think, maybe 5 times in a very short space of time before turning pro. And these are just some of the different squads and stuff. So this was actually the first team he was in. And if you just look there, you can see some of the Irish fighters that would have been around that time. So guys like Roy Nash, and you've got Kieran Joyce obviously in there as well, who would have been a very good fighter. Billy Walsh as well, so a lot of fighters. Steve Collins is actually in that one as well. So these are just different squads that he would have been in. I think that top one my dad beat his Welsh opponent, and then at the bottom his very first senior appearance, I think he lost to a Polish opponent who actually was ranked in the top 10 in the world, which I think is on the next page as well. So yeah, just some good wee squads there, and you can kind of see different names that pop up in the squad. Some very good fighters back in the day as well. Again over here, these are just some of the other squads and stuff. At the bottom I've got actually a few rankings, amateur rankings from back then. At light heavyweight you can see number 9, the Polish opponent. I'm not really going to try and pronounce his name, Stanislaw Lakamesh or something like that. He was actually ranked number 9 in the world. And then Jim Moran, who my dad lost to for England, I think in his second appearance for Ireland. Jim was actually number 12 in the world at one stage, but then even after this he won the Commonwealth Games gold medal, so that ranking would have went up even further. You can also see it middleweight. I think this was 1986. Steve Collins, who my dad beat for the Irish senior title in '84, he was actually the number 1 middleweight in Britain back then, and some really good names there also. Johnny Melfa, actually number 9 there, who my dad fought as a pro. Nicky Piper, who he fought as a pro. So yeah, it's just good to sort of see those as well. And then over here, there's not many pictures from my dad's amateur career in the scrapbook, but these are just a couple of nice photos that we found. This one at the top here was it looks like it's sort of like a wee presentation evening in the Secret Heart, and some great wee faces there. My dad's best friend, John O'Halloran's there. Ian McCauley, who obviously was a very good amateur and professional boxer. And then my dad, you can kind of see, if we can point to it, just there, just sitting. So that's a nice wee one to sort of have as well. And then here, that's my dad representing, I think, Ulster against Wales, where he won, I think, with a TKO. So that's a nice photo. And then at the bottom, I think my dad might be 16 there when he won a second Irish title. And again, just some other boxers from Secret Heart. Ian McCauley there, on the third, from the left there as well. So some nice memories to look back on there. We then sort of get to the professional career. So my dad turned pro when he was 19, and he actually moved across to Stoke to move over with to the Pat Brogan as his manager, who had already been managing Terry, his brother. So that's how that came about. And then these are just a couple of wee clippings. You can see there just another clipping of my dad with his Irish senior title, just as he was still amateur. And then Battling Builder was like a wee feature that they did in the local paper in Stoke about my dad turning pro. And I think he was working on the building site. He had to obviously work during the day and then go to the gym in the evening, so there was a nice wee feature there. And then you can start to sort of see some of the little clippings from earlier in his career as a pro. So got off to a good start. I think won his first 3 contests by stoppage, and there's a lot of little sort of write-ups there, and he got quite a lot of good press over in Stoke actually. So it was some nice wee pieces there. And then again, just more from sort of back in the Stoke time, hang up over a left hook. So a few of his early stoppages by left hook were getting featured in some of the press there as well, which is quite nice. And then this is quite a good one. This was a feature they did in Stoke where it says his fists do the talking. Quiet man Noel Magee leaves all his talking into the ring. And the thing that's funny about that is you can see myself there, James in the bottom with my mum, who's 80s hair is rocking there. And yeah, so that's a nice wee feature always to look back on when he just first turned pro as well. Again then, mum and dad getting married and moving over to Stoke, there's a couple of wee pieces there where you can see Francis wants Noel to be world champion. So again, that was done in I think the Stoke paper, and in the top left there you can see when they get married in St Patrick's in Donegal Road there. So that would have been featured in maybe the Irish News or Belfast Telegraph back then. Over on this side then, when my dad just won his first few fights, then Terry, who was already over there as a light middleweight, but he was living in Wales, they were both managed by Pat Brogan at that stage, so I think there was a show where my dad and Terry were going to be on together, so you can see their Magee brothers on the same bill, and a nice photo there of the two of them. I think my dad's only maybe 20 there, and Terry's 21. You can see the six packs and the muscles bulging out of them there, so they're both in great shape, obviously ready for their fight on that bill as well. So yeah, it's a great photo to have. The one thing, when my dad was in Stoke, he would have said that he was invited to a lot of different things, because I don't know if Stoke had a massive boxing kind of presence in terms of professionals, so he was being invited to loads of like sort of events, giving out trophies and different fundraising things. You can actually see at the top there he's with, I think it's Francis Lee, who's a very good footballer, I think for Man City it might have been, and then giving out different trophies there. And then that's just the bill that Terry and my dad were both on. I think they both won their contests, so that was just a wee write up after that as well. And again, just more little clips, another demolition job by Magee. So again, just sort of going over some of the early wins. My dad got off to a very good start in his pro career, and as you move across you can see this one's quite good. Actually, it says Potter's based Noel Magee unbeaten in 10 fights as a professional. As an extra incentive to do well, on his London debut, millionaire Terry Ramsden, the new owner of Walsall FC, is chartering a plane to fly back from the Bahamas to see Magee face Sheffield's Jimmy Ellis. So yeah, there you go, you were getting a lot of people sort of following his career back then. And again, another couple of wee clippings of different fights that he had won. I think he had won his first 13 contests, so that was just featuring one of those there. And again, just another little clip at the top there of different fundraising things he was doing. This fight here actually does enough for Magee. This is my dad's 12th fight against a fighter called Serge Fame, who my dad has always said is the toughest opponent and toughest fight he ever had. So he actually won the fight over 8 rounds, but it was the first time my dad hit the canvas in his pro career, so he got put down I think in the 5th or 6th round, and Serge Fame is a very heavy-handed puncher with the right hand and hurt my dad throughout the fight, but my dad got up and put him down in the final round, and then won the fight on points, but he always says that was probably the hardest fight he ever had, so that one goes under the radar with a lot of fighters my dad fought, but that's one that he definitely always remembers. And then over here, this is I think my dad's 13th fight where he beat Lenny Howard. Now Lenny Howard at the time, I think had already fought for like a Southern Area title, but this was going to be a test because my dad was going down to London. He had fought quite a lot of his fights in Stoke and up around that area, but he started to go down to London when he fought Serge Fame. And after the Serge Fame fight, which was very tough, I think my dad was maybe thinking this was going to be another tough one, so he had to go into the guy's backyard in Ilford, and it turned out to be the shortest night I think in my dad's pro career. So he actually knocked out Lenny Howard with a left hook after about 37 seconds I think to be exact. So that there, this was a big write up in the boxing news. So Magee blasts out a warning, so I think that kind of put him in the top 5 or 6 in Britain, and put people on alert back then. So yeah, that's a good wee write up to have. And again, these are just other clippings. They're not all in the exact order, so this was a 10 out of 10 for Magee. I think he had just knocked out, I think it was that Jeff Reimer maybe, which was a good stoppage win, and other little clippings there. Magee to conquer the world, says John Conte. So if you look there, it says John Conte wasn't afraid of sticking his neck out in it with a headline making ring career which reached its peak. It says former Irish amateur international Noel Magee is based in Stoke, has made an impressive start in his first 13 contests. And it just says there, John Conte said Noel really took a step forward that night, beating Lenny Howard, but it's not necessary to rush him. And yeah, so just nice to get sort of comments I got from former world champions. And this here was actually a photograph that won an award, I think, over in Stoke at the time. So someone had taken this photo of my dad in the gym. So it's quite a nice one there, just the way the shadow and stuff works. So yeah, that's featured in there as well. Yeah, just other wee clippings there. I think my dad sparred one of was it Frank Bruno's opponents, and James Quick Tillis and stuff. Again, my dad was kind of waiting in the wings for a British title shot back then. And then these are just different features of prospects of the year. I think my dad was featured there by the Boxing News. I think he was only maybe 12-0 at that stage. So yeah, just different little features here and there. These are all very short. I sort of found a lot of these maybe later on. I tried to do my research and put these back in. These were all at the very, very start of his pro career, so very short little clippings there. And then after my dad won his first 14 contests, he then lost his unbeaten record to Johnny Held, where he was beaten by half a point. He came in not feeling 100%, took the fight, and lost a very close decision. He felt he did enough to win, but you know, one of those things. And then straight after that, I think it's maybe coming up, Magee bids to capture a world slot. My dad actually was offered the chance to go to Paris to fight the French champion, who was called Rufino Angulo. Now, at that stage, when my dad went over to Paris, Angulo was the French champion. He had just beaten, for the title, a former European champion. So he actually, if you look here, Rufino Angulo from France, if it just goes there we go, he was actually number 2 in the IBF rankings when my dad fought him. So you know, he was obviously a massive favourite, and when my dad went over, he actually got a draw in Paris against the French champion, which tells you that he definitely won the fight. And he always says he knows he won the fight, but they gave it a draw. And if you look here, I'll just read this wee bit. It says Belfast light heavyweight Noel Magee can fight for a world title, as manager Pat Brogan reckons. Magee, the 22-year-old former Irish amateur international, put his career back on track with an 8-round draw against former world title challenger Rufino Angulo. The French crowd threw cushions into the ring in disgust after Magee had appeared to win easily, cutting Angulo over the left eye in round 7 and wobbling him on several occasions. So that was a fight that sort of people didn't expect my dad to do as well. And the thing about Angulo is he had just fought for the WBA world title against Virgil Hill, and after that fight, where my dad got the draw, Angulo actually went on to fight for the IBF world title against Prince Charles Williams, he was called, and he got stopped. I think that was his last fight. So you know, it was a performance that maybe goes under the radar, doesn't get mentioned that much, but it's definitely that was a great performance to go over and basically beat the French champion. But unfortunately, just with hometown decisions, he didn't get the victory. It was declared a draw. And then I think that was the fight poster for it. You can see there, Rufino Angulo, champion de France against Noel Magee. So I think that was over in like a disco in Paris back then. And then these are just all the wee write-ups. Magee does the job, misses his TV chance. I think he fought, but it wasn't shown on TV or something. But again, that was another victory that he had. And that's a poster from, I think, when he was fighting Jimmy Ellis. So at that stage, my dad was 13-0, and that was to get him to 14-0. And you can see different things there. So nice little posters. I sort of quite like the old-fashioned posters from the 80s. Sometimes it's nice to look back. Now they all look very different. But you can also see there Crawford Ashley, who would go on to be a stablemate of my dad's. He was on the undercard back then as well. And then these are just other wee write-ups. Magee should march on. This one actually, my dad was due to fight an American called Keith Vining, and Keith Vining didn't turn up the day before the weigh-in. He said that he couldn't make it, couldn't get on the flight, so my dad actually was given a fight against a guy called Ian Bullock. So Ian Bullock was a cruiserweight, and my dad had to step up and fight Bullock at like a day's notice and give away a stone in weight, and that was in Bullock's hometown of Hull. And you know, the fight went 10 rounds. It was my dad's first 10 rounder, I think, and it was declared a draw. Again, a very, very close fight. Maybe I think on TV, Jim Watt and stuff had said my dad had just about deserved to get it, but you know, Bullock was very game, very game guy, and that extra stone and difference as well must have been tough on the night. But yeah, again, it was a draw, but he should have been fighting an American that didn't get on the plane, so I suppose you sometimes have to take fights at last minute. But yeah, it sort of kept his career ticking over. Then around the late 80s, this is quite a, if I just turn this here so you can see it, this is like quite a nice double spread that was in the Boxing News. This was leading up to my dad fighting Sam Story for the British super middleweight title. Now that was obviously a new weight division that came in around the late 80s, in 89, so my dad, his management decided to move him down in weight, and Sam Story himself would have been a middleweight. He had fought middleweight the first part of his career, and then this new weight division came in, so Sam was moving up. So they were both due to fight for the British title that Sam had just won from, I think, Tony Burke, and that was going to be in the Ulster Hall, so a very big fight, two Belfast lads and stuff, so there was a lot of pressure on my dad at that stage because he hadn't fought in front of the Belfast crowd at all. He had always been in England, so this was just like a nice feature that was done around that time as well. And over here, I think again this is just the preview of it. Story has a real battle on his hands. Magee knows it's now or never, so it was a real pick and fight back then. When you look at the rankings as well, because I try to keep a lot of the rankings in as well, because I always think they're quite good, and if you can see here, there's a lot of great fighters mentioned there. But in the super middleweight division back then, because it was a vacant title, sorry if it just come out there, hopefully it's not letting us quite see it, but my dad's number 2 in the super middleweight rankings, and Sam Story was number 6. This was before Sam won the vacant title, so because it was a new division, obviously they just brought these rankings out and stuff. And then obviously the fight itself, my dad came in underweight, just exhausted. Sam Story fought very well, got the stoppage, and that kind of took my dad a while to get over, and then to come back to his natural light heavyweight, and then move back to Belfast because we were in Stoke. My dad was training, leaving Belfast back then, because we moved away from Stoke, I think, after about a year and a half, 2 years, because my mum couldn't settle and stuff, and then my dad was travelling over, so this was a big turning point in my dad's career, where he came back to Belfast and then went to the Barney Eastwood stable, where Sam Story then would actually be his stablemate, which again would have taken a lot of guts to do after just being beaten by the guy. But yeah, that was a big turning point in my dad's career as well. And then these are just other, again, that fight I mentioned earlier about Keith Vining he was from Detroit coming over. This fight actually never happened because again, he never got on the plane, so my dad ended up fighting Ian Bullock for that one. And then again, just super middleweight, Magee goes for title. That was just some of the previews leading up to that Sam Story contest. And then I think this one here is just when my dad's now moved back to Belfast, and that must be just something to do with a sponsorship with Barney Eastwood stable. That's actually a photo of my dad and Pat Brogan, so that was his sort of manager, and trained him as well at the start of his pro career. So Pat passed away a few years ago, so it's a nice photo there to look back on as well. And other little clippings, again, this might be from the Stoke days. Magee says no to dream Aussie trip. So I think my dad was sparring Tom Collins for his world title contest over in Australia, and Tom Collins wanted to take my dad away to be his sparring partner in Australia, but I think at that stage my dad had me and Haley, very young kids, and I don't know if my mum would have been up for that, for him to go away for so long, so he turned that trip down. This here, actually, you would think that this shouldn't make the cut in the scrapbook because it's obviously been torn to pieces, but this is kept in there because my sister Haley, apparently when she was a baby, kissed this clipping of my dad that much that it wore away a bit. So we'll sort of leave that in there just because it's quite a nice wee thing to have there. But yeah, a write-up that definitely is frayed a little bit. And these are just different. This is actually, this is quite a good photo here when my dad went to the Eastwood stable. So if you look at some of the quality there, and I would say half the gym might not have been there at the time. So on the far right, you've got Ray Close, went on to win a European title and probably should have been a world champion against Chris Eubank. You've Oscar Cheka, I think that's one of the Wenton brothers maybe. Crawford Ashley there in the middle, who was British champion and won Commonwealth and European titles. Barney Eastwood, obviously, who was the manager and promoter and stuff, who had such a successful time back then. And then you've Crisanto Espana, who was a fantastic world champion at welterweight. Bernardo Cheka, who was one of the trainers. John Breen, another one. Eddie Shaw before that. And then my dad there on the left hand side. So it's just a nice photo of some of the talent in the gym back then as well. This one here is just a I think my dad's first fight when he moved to the Eastwood stable. So Breaking Glass is the title there because he was actually fighting a guy called Glass Campbell. So that one was actually a very tough fight for my dad, an 8-rounder where Glass Campbell was a very game fighter and went on to win the Southern Area title and fight for the British title. So that was a tough one for him, but he got the win that got him back on track. And again, just other little clippings there of different fights when he went back to the Eastwood stable. This is actually really good one. This is Collins, the Light's hometown fan. So Steve Collins, who my dad had obviously fought as an amateur, he had came back from America after doing really well over there, winning I think the USBA title and challenging Mike McCallum for the WBA title and getting beat on a points decision. But he actually came back and went into the Eastwood stable, and this was like a big homecoming for Steve Collins down in the National Stadium. My dad actually fought Tony Wilson, who again, these are fighters maybe that people haven't heard of now, but Tony Wilson was a fantastic fighter. He was a British champion as a pro, won the Lonsdale belt outright, so defended it twice, got the belt. But as an amateur as well, he was a 2-time ABA champion, went to the 1984 Olympic Games and was beat on a countback in the quarterfinal. So he was actually announced the winner and he would have got a bronze medal at those Olympics, but then there was an issue and they called him back in the ring and they reversed the decision. It was always very controversial, but yeah, so a fantastic fighter, and that was one of my dad's best performances. He won a 3rd round stoppage in front of the National Stadium, Dublin fans, and yeah, it's always one I love looking back and watching because my dad fought fantastic that night. That win, I think my dad won 7 in a row when he came back to the Eastwood stable. That kind of put him in line to challenge for the British title at light heavyweight, which was his natural weight. So in 1982, my dad got the opportunity to fight for the British title against Morris Core, which was a vacant title because his stablemate Crawford Ashley actually gave the title up because he had won it outright, so that my dad could challenge for it. So that was something my dad had been building towards. So these are just some write-ups leading up to it. The one thing you'll notice, which I always sort of laughed at, thinking, I mean, what a balls up. The poster for Core against Noel Magee, I don't know if you can see that there, but you might notice that Noel Magee is not Noel Magee. That's actually Steve Collins that they put on the poster. So I mean, you had one job, like, so that's one that if my dad would have won it and you'd have looked back at the poster, you'd always been, looking, my grandkids saying, well, that's not my granda. So yeah, that was just one thing there, and then another right up there of my dad beating Tony Wilson. So Noel Magee stops former British champion. So that was definitely a big victory for my dad, because it showed him that he could, he could beat, a champion. Well, I know he was a former champion, but he was at that level as well. And then these are just some write-ups again from some of those days before that British title. I think this is where Crisanto Espana topped the bill in Belfast, and my dad beat Frank Minton, who was actually a very good sort of super middleweight from America, and he had moved up to light heavy, and my dad stopped him in 3 rounds. And the British rankings around that time in '92, I think if you look here, Crawford Ashley was number 1 because he was the British champion, and then Morris Core and my dad were 2 and 3. So them two were put forward to actually fight for the British title. And you can see Glass Campbell there, he was number 5, who my dad had beat, and Tony Wilson there as well. So yeah, some great fighters. And you look at some of the other ones there as well. You've got Sam Story there, super middleweight. Let me see who else have we got. Any of the local fighters. You've Ray Closer, Victor Cordoba, who would have been based in Belfast, Steve Collins there at middleweight, so yeah, some great talent back then. Again, just more rankings sort of found. I think this was light heavyweight in Europe, it was number 12. In the Commonwealth rankings, let me see, number 5 in the Commonwealth, so again, doing very well at that stage, leading up to that sort of British title challenge in 1982, and you can see some of the other fighters there as well. And yeah, the fight itself, the British title, my dad lost after putting Morris Core down twice and being ahead. Just sort of Morris Core got to my dad in the 9th round, caught him and stopped him, which was a big disappointment for my dad, because he felt that he was winning the fight, and just a lapse of concentration was one of those things. So these are just some write-ups. Magee goes for glory. That was in the Belfast Telegraph the night of the fight. Brave Magee's title, Hopes and Ruins. So that was the write-up obviously after the fight. So yeah, it's the sort of ecstasy of winning and the agony of losing. In different clips. And again, that's just another sort of clipping just before my dad has that British title fight. Long wait pays off for Magee. So just leading up to that. And then that's just the sort of big spread, I think, in the Boxing Monthly magazine. A nice clip there of my dad and sort of both of them landing there, body punching a counter hook. So that's just the write up of the fight where I think they agreed my dad was in the lead to get into the 9th round, but yeah, Morse Core was able to pull out the victory there. Just other wee clippings. I think this is a programme from maybe a bill in the King's Hall from I think 94. This would have been maybe on the Chris Eubank Right Close rematch bill. So yeah, it's just a nice write up about his career to date. Nice little right hand being landed there. I think that was against John Cook. And then this is actually from 1983. So Magee gets title challenge boost. This was when my dad was fighting for the IBF Intercontinental title. So these Intercontinental titles came in around that time. And my dad was actually going to Germany to face Darius Michalczewski, who back then he wouldn't have known anything about. But if he would have, I suppose it might not have been a good thing, because Michalczewski was the European senior gold medalist as an amateur. He was 16-0, 15 knockouts when my dad fought him, and he would go on to be one of the greatest light heavyweights of the 90s. And any year really, made 20 odd defences of the title, beat Virgil Hill, unified the title, became a 2-weight world champion at cruiserweight. I think at one stage was 47-0. So yeah, my dad went over and put up a brave performance, won some rounds early on, but after 8 rounds, Michalczewski just put the pressure on and got to my dad. So chance of a lifetime for Noel Magee. That was the write up leading up to it. And then this is the write up. Magee fails to rise in world in the 8th, and I think again they sort of say that my dad won 2 or 3 of the early rounds, put up a really good performance, but yeah, just came up short. So at this stage, I suppose my dad's lost 3 title fights, and hoping to try and win a title, but they're not easy challenges. You're going to people's backyards as well. So and again, just different ones. Euro chance for Magee. That's when my dad actually then got, after a couple of wins, got the chance to fight for the European title over in France against Fabrice Tiozzo, who was a fantastic fighter. And this is actually a nice photo of Tiozzo and my dad in March of 1985. So Tiozzo was the reigning European champion. He had beat Morris Core for the European title and stopped them, and he had just lost, I think, to Virgil Hill for the world title. So, sorry. Title door opens for Magee. This was a nice feature done. Eamon O'Hara did this. I think that might have been Hugh Russell took that photo as well. So a nice big write-up. But at this stage, this is my dad's 4th opportunity to go for a title, but he came up short again. So, losing 4 title fights in a row, but Fabrice Tiozzo stopped my dad in the 4th round, and my dad would say now that he's probably the best fighter he ever fought. One of the toughest fighters. Any punches didn't seem to have an effect. He was just so strong, and yeah, just that was a victory that Tiozzo got, and then he would go on to actually win the WBC light heavyweight title about 3 months later against Mike McCallum. So I always sort of say to my dad, you basically fought a WBC world champion that night. He was at that level, and yeah, there's no disgrace in losing to someone like that. So yeah, these are just other wee clips. Decks cleared for Magee's Euro title bid, Magee's title shock, so just leading up to that European title fight. And so that then sort of takes us to May of 1985, over here on the left. So my dad, who had already agreed to fight Gary Delaney, he had agreed to fight Delaney at the end of 94, and then again at the start of 95, and through injuries and different setbacks it was postponed. So my dad got that European title shot sort of within a couple of weeks' notice. But Barry Hearn, who's Eddie Hearn's dad, for anyone that doesn't know, back then Barry Hearn was Gary Delaney's promoter, and he was actually over watching my dad fight for the European title, and he came in the changing room after the fight when my dad had just lost it to Tiozzo and said, listen Noel, if you still want to fight for the Commonwealth title, we've got a date here for 7 weeks time or whatever it was, and my dad said yeah, no problem. So as I say, losing 4 title fights, this was number 5. You weren't going to get any more after this, so this was really my dad's last chance saloon, as they say. So this is a nice write-up. Magee's desperate to snatch title, so David Kelly did this, and that was obviously a nice picture just in the Barney Eastwood stable as well. And then this is the actual write-up after my dad beat Gary Delaney to claim that Commonwealth title. So obviously that was the greatest night of his professional career against the odds. Delaney was number 1 in Britain, ahead of Crawford Ashley, Morris Core. He was number 1. He was Commonwealth champion. He was undefeated in 20 fights, and my dad was basically being brought over there just as someone who had a half decent record. Barry Hearn probably seen him lose for the European title and thought, yeah, this will be a good name on the record of Gary's. But my dad fought out of his skin that night, and that was definitely a big upset, and you can see the headline there: "Upset Magee wrecks Delaney's record." So it's a nice one to read back on there. And then you start getting the nice headlines. You know, Magee seeks world title shot. So you can see there, Barney Eastwood, who actually wasn't at the fight. He couldn't make it, but he was there in the airport when my dad came home. So you can see him pointing. I think my dad had a cut in the fight, so he must be pointing to that. And straight away the talk was about world title fights, rematch and Michalczewski, which I suppose if anyone's heard my dad's podcast, he kind of looks back and thinks, you know, he'd loved a couple of home defences of his Commonwealth title and maybe, you know, done it at a different pace. But anyway, these were sort of nice clippings. And then that's the programme of the fight. Just